Welcome, Heart Dog supporter Paula. Just joined the Heart Dog supporter team. So let's talk. Oh, so one thing I wanted to mention, actually, I should put a link in the chat. I just want to mention very briefly, we just finished a collaboration with a company called Hyperflight. Now, if you guys have watched the channel for long enough, you've probably seen instructor Carol. You might know that she's a 5-time world champion of disc dogs. Still 5, maybe 6 now?
I think she's still 5.
She's at least a 5-time world champion.
Maybe she'll be 6 in 2024.
Maybe. But she mentioned to us, some of the best discs that the disc dog community uses are these Hyperflight discs. So we reached out to Hyperflight, and we now offer a Hyperflight McCann Dogs disc. Actually, I don't know if I can get to it. Now, let's talk a little bit.
Yeah, we have 2 options. One that's a little softer.
Jaws? Yeah, one's the Jaws, which is the toughest, best flying, puncture-proof disc for dogs in the world. We're
not allowed to say the other word.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There just isn't a better one. I'll put the thing for the Jaws there. But there's also a soft flight. And I'll tell you why Deegan, who, if you watch the channel for long enough, you might know Deegan was the black Labrador Retriever that brought me to McCann Dogs. And the Jaws disc, this disc, it's exactly like the ones that we're creating now, was her favorite thing to do. She loved playing fetch with those discs. And the great part was, if you have an energetic dog, you can totally appreciate this. Like, I could tire her out quickly, and the disc was a great way to do that. So we now offer a McCann Dogs Hyperflight K10 Jaws disc. We don't have a ton of them, but check them out, mccanndogs.store.
I like that it's called Blueberry and not Blue.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to mention to
Banana?
our live stream train station passengers, because I'd love for you guys to get them. Who knows how long until we run out.
I know.
Anyway, okay. Let's dive into this. We need to talk about the 3 elements that you need to be aware of, be thinking about. Oh, for those of you that went to go get your notepad, I appreciate that. Or maybe you've got your phone out to take notes. Now, I don't want you to take a single note.
Oh. Unless
you plan on doing something about it, because so often we'll sit down with you in the live stream, or we'll see on videos. There's all sorts of educational content, suggestions, and training, and then people say like, well, I haven't tried that yet, but it's probably not going to work, or oh yeah, I watched the whole video, but I haven't practiced it yet. Mm-hmm. The most important, education is nothing without action. It's really the application of knowledge is power, is really where we're going with this. So whatever we talk about tonight, as we go through our teaching plan, you need to be aware of the fact that you can take it in, but you're going to have to practice it, especially if you have a dog who's struggling with the nuisance behavior and has had an opportunity to rehearse the bad stuff. So be aware of that. Why don't we talk about, we had a super chat right off the top of the show. Mm-hmm. Why don't we talk about Lisa's challenge? Sure. Thank you for the super chat.
You should add James to that.
Lisa.
To that channel.
He's in.
Okay. Hi there. Lisa here from Katy, Texas, with my 8-month-old border collie, Milo. How can I stop my pup to start barking at... Can you make it a little bit bigger for me?
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
Sorry. At everything. People walking by, shadows, dog next door, laugh out loud. Thanks so much. Yep, I think it's pretty normal for, especially border collie or any of those herding breeds, actually a lot of breeds, not even specific to herding breeds, to bark at things that they see walking by, shadows, that type of thing. They can be very easily stimulated by anything that has to do with motion, especially with border collies specifically. They can get a real internal high off of reacting to those things. So the most important thing you want to do right now, Lisa, is try to stop the opportunity for your puppy to rehearse doing those things. So, for example, if your puppy's in the living room with the windows wide open, curtains wide open, and people are walking by, and your puppy just has free access to the window to see those things and is barking reaction before you can do anything, you're really making your job a little bit harder, because you're addressing it, or even maybe you're not addressing it, I don't know, but if you are addressing it, you're doing it after the dog's already in this really heightened state. So you want to try and make sure that you're not allowing the dog to the best of your ability, to rehearse those types of things as often, because it will become more an ingrained behavior. So prevention is going to be important. So think about all of the typical scenarios where your puppy may react that you would prefer them not to, and try to avoid those, or to try to get ahead of the storm by getting your dog's mind on something else. Further to that, and this is a comment that can be generalized to all kinds of unwanted behaviors. So if those of you who are listening don't have this particular problem, this answer can solve many problems. And that is when you're in a scenario where your dog is doing a bad behavior, one of the best things to do is to teach your dog to do something else instead of that bad behavior. Teach them to do something else. And one of the easiest ways to do it is to use some type of motivator that's going to get their attention. So using this as an example, if I'm walking down the street and my dog typically is going to lock onto something and start barking, I might, start to anticipate that thing happening, and I might move off to the side and get my dog to sit and maybe work some attention with some treats. Or maybe my dog likes to be a little bit more active. I might call my dog and pull out their favorite tug toy, or maybe their Frisbee, and have a little game of tug, and then have the dog sit and look at me and then play tug again. Kind of distract the dog as that thing goes by to redirect my dog's attention. And what we often find happens, if the person has good timing, which more on that later, is some dogs will start to go, there's a person coming, but I know that when that person comes, typically my mom gets my attention, then we play. And before you even ask them, they start to generalize that. That means I turn and I interact with my mom. And you can start to change the narrative a little bit. But again, that formula of training can be applied to many different problematic behaviors, but there's using barking as an example.
Yeah. You could also, if it's barking in the house and it's sort of like abrupt noises outside, you can always use something like music to fill your space. We actually created music with a bunch of music producers specifically for dogs, with a few, very intentional choices that were made with the music, whether it's the pace or the tones, to fill your space. You can see McCann Dogs Music on Spotify or Apple Music, or there's even a YouTube channel, McCann Dogs Music.
And watch how much freedom the dog's getting and how much opportunity they're sort of doing their own thing and being able to kind of make up their own agenda while they're young like that, because they're just so impressionable. And if you leave them with nothing to do, they will find something to do. So you have to be careful about that.
Yeah. Good. Let's talk a little bit about the 3 steps, sort of the 3 things that you need to be aware of to make sure you're giving your dog the best information. This is also the kind of thing that is going to speed up the training, and it's going to be essential if you have a dog that's rehearsed whatever this problem behavior is for any length of time. The first and a crucial one, I mean, all of these are crucial, but I really want you to think about this, is foundation and fairness. This is something that comes up a lot when we talk about dogs who are jumping up, dogs who are pulling on leash. I mean, that's an unwanted behavior, a little bit more of a skill, but it's so common when I hear someone say, oh, my dog just won't ever stop pulling on leash. The moment we go out the door, he's pulling, or he's never really walked very well. I want you to think to yourself, drop your problem in the chat. What's one thing that you'd love to solve tonight? Drop it in the chat. I'd like to see the variety of challenges that you're having. But if you could fix one thing, let's talk about that. Drop it in the chat. So specifically with walking on leash. If you're going out and you are struggling with your walks and it's never going well, and you think to yourself like, geez, I don't know if I'm going to ever overcome this. I want you to really consider, what foundation does your dog have? And the reason we included fairness in this is if you're putting your dog in a situation where they're likely to fail, then you're not being fair about the situation. And this can mean maybe leaving them alone too long. Giving them access to your house in places where they keep having accidents, or they continue to chew on stuff, or, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's a busy environment that you're really struggling with. Well, the worst thing you can do is take that dog and put them in that situation and have any expectation that they're going to be successful, that by chance this time it's going to work. I'll give you one that I've heard and seen, is you go out to the park. Unfortunately, in this specific instance, I'm thinking of someone who went out to the dog park and they say, whenever I call him, he will never come back. I mean, that's an unreasonable expectation. Number one, foundation. What's the foundation of that skill that you're looking for? Think about that, whatever your problem behavior is. And is it fair to expect your dog to this time make the right choice when historically they haven't? when they keep failing over and over again. Foundation and fairness is going to be a really important. I love when Kale, I forget what we were talking about when you got to this point, but you talked a little bit about an incompatible behavior. Maybe it's jumping up, but you get the dog to do something so that they can't do the thing that you don't like. Yeah. That's a great foundational step for you.
I think another thing to remember too, what Ken's saying is so good. I'm just going to sort of make it really blunt for you. And that is, dogs don't come to us knowing how to walk on a loose leash, how to come when they're called reliably. That is all up to us to teach them. And often what we see happens is people put their dog in a university level challenge when they've never taken their dog to kindergarten, which kindergarten is Canadian. I don't know what they say in the States or other places, but, from the beginning. So, walking is a great example. A lot of people say, well, my dog just pulls me around the street. What do I do? Well, have you trained him to know how to keep a loose leash? Loose leash.
That's tough to say.
Do they know how to stop and sit at your side on a loose leash? Do they know how to respond to leave it? Do they know how to look at you on command? Do they know how to turn away from distractions? Do they have leash respect? There's so many things that we train our dogs to do in our programs and in our training methods before we even have somebody go on a walk, which is shocking to people. And the reason why we do it is I can spend a half an hour working on training my dog how to have walking on leash skills in my house, in my driveway, in my backyard, rather than going for a half-hour walk around the block. So when I get to the point where I'm ready to take the show on the road, I actually can go for a pleasant walk with a dog that, knows that I'm alive and wants to check in with me and doesn't pull on the leash. But a lot of times, and we don't even know that we do it, we put them in a scenario where it's so easy for the dog to fail because we kind of expect the dog should just do the thing, but we've not done any of the foundational work to make sure that the thing works. And every dog's a little bit different. There are some dogs out there that are a bit more easygoing than others. But I've seen a lot of dogs that have natures like that, but if they have poor information, they get worse with things because they're really just as good as what information they're getting from us. So it's really important that you understand that.
I've grabbed two Heart Dog supporters' comments, and they're comparable that we can address. So Paula says, my 2-year-old golden doodle has incredible prey drive. How do I get her attention when she's zeroing in on a squirrel? Moira has a comparable challenge chasing leaves on a windy day when out walking. Now, as dog trainers, we can see the relationship between these two challenges that you guys have. And this is where we need to talk a little bit about a foundational exercise. I mean, those situations could be very different if you're not out both on a walk, but the foundation for this exercise and the fairness and expectation that you can have is you can start to work on something like a leave it command. This is something that we teach our dogs fairly early. It's certainly something that we talk a lot about in our life skills program. And let's talk a little bit about why the leave it is a valuable skill and how these guys might be able to use it. And then we can get a little bit deeper into the next two steps.
For sure. Leave it. Teaching a dog to leave it is so important. And so our expectation of leave it is when our dog is looking at something, thinking about going to something. We use the command leave it, and we expect our dogs to say, okay, that's off limits for me. And they redirect their attention back on us. We, if the dog has gone and the thing is in the mouth and they've caught the squirrel or they've got the leaf or whatever, leave it is kind of it's sort of redundant at that point because they have the thing now. They're not going to leave it. You would ask them to drop it or whatever, but that's a different direction. So leave it, the expectation is you don't go to that thing in the first place. So when we're teaching such thing, we like to, again, work on the foundation of the lesson when we are not stuck in the actual problem. So the first time my dog hears leave it is not going to be when I'm outside with squirrels around. It might be in the kitchen or the living room where there's like nothing going on and there might be one distraction that I have pre-placed. I've pre-thought about to put on the ground that might be like kind of interesting for my dog, but maybe not that exciting. And then I might be armed with something that I know my dog loves, like their favorite treat, their favorite toy, whatever it might be. And I would spend some time teaching the dog that when you look at that thing that I've to put as a distraction out for you, and I say leave it, and then I then show you something of greater value, it does not take long before their ears start to perk up and they check in when they hear the word leave it, because they understand if I leave that, something better is going to come my way from my person. And then, of course, you can build more distractions. You might change the environment that you're training in. But there's a lot of foundational skills that will go into that so that if you are out in real life scenarios, you've got some money in the bank with that leave it command. They've heard it, 50, 60, 70, 80 times, and they've done so much turning back to you. I'm always amazed at my young puppies' responses to leave it when I have them outside, because of the foundational stuff that I'll do first. And, by the time they're, 12, 14, 15, 16 weeks old, if they go toward picking a stick up on the yard or whatever it might be, and I call their name or I say leave it, the puppies are already turning back to me. And it's not because there's some brainchild, it's because I've practiced in other scenarios. So the dog actually learns that leaving it and coming to me is a valuable thing. So that's where that foundation really comes in. We need to spend some time putting value on the behavior we want, so that the thing that the dog wants to do doesn't become as exciting anymore.
I really love how you gave that example, because you talked about foundation and fairness at the same time. You're setting the dog up in a situation where you're kind of controlling the environment. And if you were to expect to go out on your walk, as you regularly do, and try to work through the leave it, your environment might be too stimulating, and it would be unfair to try to introduce your dog to this new skill, brand new thing that they've never heard of, and you're kind of figuring out how you're going to train through this, and your dog doesn't have a chance. Shannon always makes a comment about learning math or teaching math or learning math at an amusement park or something like that. This would be a situation like that. You're already trying to teach your dog a relatively complicated thing that they naturally don't want to do. Like your dog is bred or
they
has
want
been bred.
to chase the
That's
squirrel.
Right. Well, they want to get the thing. Through years and years and years, the dogs have been bred to do that kind of thing. So teaching them to choose you and to listen to you over getting that thing, which is they just naturally want to do, it's going to be difficult. However, with the right steps and good timing, you can be very successful. The next most important thing to think about when we're talking about stopping some of these nuisance behaviors is your timing. The amount of struggle that I went through as a student, before I was a student, like as an average dog owner who had lots of problems with my dog before I went to McCann Dogs, was I just didn't understand the timing thing. And once you figure out the timing that's required for these situations, to really intervene when you need to give your dog the right information when you need to, it's going to change this behavior entirely. It's going to allow you to intercept the dog's thinking. You're going to be amazed. So an example would be the leave it command. When should you give the leave it command?
When your dog is thinking about going to the thing.
Yeah, and tell me at home, how do you think how would you know that your dog's thinking about going to something? We'll give you a minute to answer.
I purposely said thinking and not the other word.
Yeah. What cue are you going to have that your dog's thinking about leaving you, that your dog's thinking about getting after something? What's that cue going to be for you? Because timing is going to lead to it's going to allow you to train the dog more quickly. It's going to make more sense for the dog, but it's also going to allow you to be more successful. And when you, especially with something like a leave it, this is going to be so important. But it's also going to be, timing is important so that you don't become dependent on food, as an example.
Yep.
If you do things out of order, or if you do things with poor timing, you are going to become dependent on the food. And we use a lot of food in training at the beginning. That's on purpose. We work really hard to make sure that we have a resource that the dogs naturally want. Mm-hmm. But the whole point of the McCann method is to work away from the food so that we're using the dog's motivation. That's why they're making those choices. We'll still we'll randomly reward great choices. We'll still use food, but we're not dependent on it. It's going to be really important. So Katerina says the right answer.
Looking at the thing.
Looking at the thing.
You got it.
Yeah, that's going to be your first indication that your dog's thinking that they're going to go after something. And then you
would react. Then you would react with leave it, or you might react by stepping on your house line if you're in the house, or you might react by shortening up on your leash and changing direction away from the distraction. You might say leave it and pull out your high value reward and lure your dog's attention away from what they're distracting. There's lots of things that you can do, but it all starts with that first cue followed by some type of follow through.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be different for each situation, and this is where we can get into a little more specifics, like in the online training programs and that kind of thing for your dog and for your, I know someone said like coordination's challenging too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and we can appreciate that. But so the big picture here is that you need to use good timing. The moment your dog's thinking about jumping up on the counter, the moment your dog's thinking about, how about if you're having house training problems, potty training problems, the moment you see your dog start to circle or they start to squat, if you can interrupt that moment, boy, what a great training opportunity that is for your dog to understand, like, oh, okay, I don't know how she knew that's what I was about to do, but I get it now. This is the wrong thing.
Magician.
Oh, absolutely. But, you know, this is how you're going to make sure that your dog's not self-rewarding, getting that thing. Some dogs are completely satisfied just chasing. You know, just running after that squirrel or running after those leaves might be enough to be satisfying enough that's going to make it harder to train through. But if you see their mind focus or attention focus to that thing, you drop your leave it. This is going to require one thing. It's going to require that you are supervising or you have control of your dog in one way or another, whether it's a 6-foot leash or maybe it's a long line or a house line in the house. Supervision is going to be a really important part of this because if you don't catch them in the act, you can't do anything about it. You know, especially if it's chewing and house training problems and all of these other things. It requires some supervision, and that is how you're going to have great timing. Now, this isn't forever. You're not going to have to be eyes on your dog all of the time, but when you're struggling with something, it's worth your time to invest in watching the dog closely, really focusing, knowing that, hey, they might make a mistake here. I'm going to make sure that I have some control with my leash or line. Maybe it's a long line, and I'm going to be ready to issue that leave it command or, you know, give them the information that that's not what I want. Sometimes, you know, leave it as a relatively specific example. Sometimes we'll use a negative verbal reprimand, something like an or hey, something to mark the moment when they've made.
Surprise them almost.
That's right. Yeah, it's so valuable, especially with house training.
Yeah, that can be really, really helpful. You know, I sometimes, if I'm house training puppies, I will not yell, but sort of like a, hey, what are you doing? And I'll clap my hands. The puppies are like, whoa, what? That's that. Yeah. But very quickly I turn from, you know, surprising the puppy to say, whoa, you stop what you're doing. And then I scoop them up and then take them outside right away. But, you know, timing is so important because, you know, if the dogs had the mistake and then they're off having a nap in the other room and you happen to walk in and be like, this is annoying, this is here. You know, dogs don't really think like humans do. They live in the moment. So if they, you know, did a bad behavior, number one, they might not know it's bad. And number two, if it's, you know, 1 minute later, 30 minutes later, 4 hours later, they're not going to correlate that you're angry because they, you know, had an accident on the floor. They just don't understand that. And so then we end up getting upset with our dogs and we confuse them because they don't even know why, which means they can't change the behavior in the future because they don't even know why you're upset in the first place. But if you're able to interrupt or acknowledge a bad behavior or good behavior in the moment, the dog can go, oh, this reaction is for this behavior that I'm doing. I get it. Now I understand what I'm supposed to do. And then we can, you know, show them if it's potty accident, I can say, no, this is wrong. Out we go. Puppy finishes outside. And then I can, you know, change my tune and praise and make a big deal for my puppy to go outside. So it's very easy for them to understand this is not an acceptable behavior. This is an acceptable behavior. But I think a lot of people, they give information to the dog as if, you know, the dog is a human, or it's, you know, the timing is so late, and then they get frustrated. Why isn't the dog changing their behaviors? Yeah. Why isn't it working? Yep. And so many times it comes down specifically to timing because people just give the information way too late, and the poor dog just doesn't have a hot clue what you're talking about because it just doesn't make sense to them. So, You can't have great timing if you don't have good supervision. So if there are any unwanted behaviors, whether it's in the house or outside the house or whatever it might be, if you're not watching your dog, you're not able to give great information with good timing. So those two things really go hand in hand if it's trying to stop an unwanted behavior. But the same thing goes for going back to our walking on leash talk. If I'm walking my dog and I'm walking by, a neighbor's house that maybe has a wild and crazy dog, and my dog starts to react, and I continue to walk down the street doing absolutely nothing to my dog, and then eventually my arm gets tired and I get irritated, and then now I'm upset with the dog. Well, the reaction to the dog's behavior should have happened the moment the dog started to make a poor reaction, not 3 houses down the block, because your dog's going to go, oh, okay, I can react for 15 seconds and then I'm not allowed to anymore. You've got to make sure that your timing is really, really quick. Now I'm giving you suggestions for correcting your dog, but if you want to be a great dog trainer, your timing better be awesome when you're rewarding your dog, because what we know from training dogs is dogs repeat what they feel is rewarding to them. And sometimes those rewarding behaviors are not what we love. It's what gets them excited, like jumping, barking, lunging. Those are things we don't like, but those are fun for them. What we want to do is try to capture good behaviors and quickly reward them with good timing, so our dog goes, wait a second, this choice is a better thing to do instead. We really believe that when we're trying to fix a behavior, we want the dog to do whatever we want them to do right as many times as possible, and that should outweigh the amount of times that the dog is doing that thing incorrectly. And if the balance is off, if the dog is making more errors than successes, we need to change what we're doing about our information, timing, level of distraction, whatever it might be. But your timing needs to be that you can catch things quickly if there's a mistake, but I would argue even more importantly, you need to be on the money when you're wanting to reinforce something, because that, if you can do more of that, number one, it's way more enjoyable for your dog and for you to be training together. And number two, it builds a stronger bond between you and your dog, because they go, gosh, you're so clear, you're so fun, this is great, I'm getting rewards, I'm getting play. Like, life is just wonderful when we can spin it that direction.
I think that
dropping knowledge bombs.
I was gonna say preach. Editor James in Studio 905, who's unfortunately not with us tonight, is working in. He's creating some environments for us to use on the live stream. I think one's gonna have to be like a what's it called? What's a pew in front of a church? It's not a lectern. It's like a whatever it's called. You know what? It could be a soapbox, and we put you on it because. What
if you do like knowledge bomb and then a bomb explodes?
Yeah, well,
and all kinds of.
Here's the problem: we just got demonetized on YouTube because he said that. No, just kidding.
Oh, because I said the B word.
Yeah.
Oh crap.
No, but in all seriousness, I mean the value of that last minute. These are the kinds of things that I went to McCann Dogs for when I was a student, and they really changed the way I saw dogs, how I understood how they learned, and I found it so valuable. And the more when I became an instructor at McCann Dogs, this is the kind of conversations I had to have with people who are struggling. If you're struggling with your dog training, this is the kind of thing. If you have to rewind this after the show or whatever, pay attention to what Kale mentioned. Really valuable information. I want to say a huge thank you. Welcome to the Heart Dog team. Jess, Kristen, and David, thank you for joining us here.
Welcome, everybody.
We got Prez Sadat has dropped a super chat. I'm just going to grab it here, and then I'll put it up on the screen. Prez Sadat. Oh, let me just get a better picture of it there. Okay. At home, I'm torn whether to keep my dog on a leash near me or let him wander when I'm still in the room. I feel like he's active when he's free, and I have him in close to me in his kennel so much. So it's basically a balance of like. Read that
last sentence again. I feel like he's active when free because I have him
in his kennel.
So close to me in his kennel so much. Okay.
Yeah. So this is basically a question about like management of
much
that
freedom?
time? Yeah, great question.
Yeah. So it can be hard to know how much freedom you should give a dog. What we suggest that you do when you have a young dog in your home is have a balance between giving the dog some free time, which I'll talk about what free time is in our eyes, versus some crate time. I think a really common mistake that people will make, and it sounds like you're not doing this, which is awesome, but people will only put their dog in a crate or a kennel when they're leaving or when they're going to sleep. And then sometimes the dogs start to build a sour association with the crate because they just think you're going to leave them. So it sounds like you are using it when you're at home, which is amazing. But we do need to have some balance because we can't have a dog in a crate all day long as well. So there's a couple suggestions I have for you. Number one, when your dog is out of the crate, you do need to have them on a leash or a line. It doesn't mean that you need to hold it though. So it should just be dragging around behind your dog. What we would recommend though is use some barricades or some blocks, blocking things to stop your dog from being able to have free range of a big area of your house.
Like baby gates.
Yeah, baby gates or X-Pen or something like that you can put across the doorway or close the door so your dog's free in the room with you or whatever it might be. And you can give them something productive to do. But I'm going to tell you that I always have more luck with my dogs when I'm working on free time if I've done it after I've walked them or after I've trained them or after I've done some retrieving, some fetch with them or something like that. And then they've come in, they've had a drink, they're kind of ready to like kind of come down a little bit because we've just done something active. That is a great time to start working on free time because free time in the house is not like, let's have a party and get into everything and jump over here and like act like a crazy dog. It is like, learn how to chill out and be in the house. I might have the dog on a line, and it's been many times if I'm on the computer and I want to give my dog some free time, I'll have a dog bed with like one of their favorite chew bones, and I'll have the house line on, and I'll pull the bed right beside my chair at my desk. I'll put my foot on the house line, I'll put the dog on the bed, put the chew bone on, and I'll just let them chew away on the bone, or I'll give them a Kong or something while I'm typing away. And I can kind of keep my eye on the dog, but that way they don't have free range. And if I'm typing away and the puppy is driving me absolutely bananas because they're just not able to settle, that tells me that they're not really in the mind frame where they're able to chill there. So I might be like, hey, I have to get these 100 emails out. So in the crate you go. Or I might say, okay, I'm going to take you outside. We're going to do something active. And then we're going to either come back in and try again. But typically you won't see us giving our dog in the early stages just freedom to do whatever in the house. They usually have some type of job that they are doing, or they're tired enough that like going and chilling on a bed is kind of what they want to do already. And that really makes life so much easier. We really work on a lot of settle skills in our life skills program. Actually, we do in our puppy essentials program as well. But teaching the dogs how to do like a bed stay and how to go and lie down when they're told. I think leave it, name, and go and lie down are things that we work on so much in the early stages.
For sure.
Because they allow you to manage the dog a little bit more without getting frustrated with them, and then not having to crate them quite as much. But if they can't behave, they can't have freedom out of the crate. So the more I can train the dog to behave, the less I'm worried about having to use the crate.
Yeah, you mentioned life skills and puppy essentials. Talk briefly about that, how we can specifically help you and your dog at home.
So
briefly,
our puppy essentials program, we have one in person and we also have one online. It's for puppies under 4 months of age, and we work on a lot of exercises that are going to prevent problems from down the road. So it's about building relationship. We work on nipping and biting. We work on leadership. We work on problem solving. Of course, we talk about basics and things like that. But really, we're trying to get actually, the program used to be called Head Start. I was well named because we get a head start on things to stop them. Now, obviously, we have in classes starting new every few weeks, actually. But our online classes have no start and stop date in terms of when you can begin. You can literally start tonight if you want to. We work really hard on our online programs to try and offer as much personal support as we possibly can. A lot of people just think it's going to be like our YouTube videos where you watch and you try and decipher everything on your own.
Right.
And that could not be further from the truth. No. There's a very structured program that shows you exactly what to do. But the big thing about our online classes is that if you get into a trouble where you're following something and you're like, well, it's not really working for me, you just get to contact one of us and we can say, actually,
Ask a trainer.
Barb and this dog, for your dog, you need to do it this way. So we get to know you. And then our life skills program is for dogs over 4 months. And we are going to get more into the nitty gritty things like walking and recalls and things like that, manners, self-control, all of that, but the same great support that you get for Puppy Essentials.
But a lot of big picture, the conversations that happen every day in those programs talks about the why. You mentioned really quickly, like, you might be letting your puppy out of their kennel or your dog out of their kennel or letting them in the house or whatever, and having some expectation that they're just going to go lie down on a bed when that's fairly unreasonable.
Yeah.
But if your plan is you get your dog out of their kennel or whatever, you take them outside for the pee, bring them back in, and then you have a game of tug or do something that's engaging with them, maybe work a little some skills or something. Now you've tired them out, and now you've got 30 minutes, maybe an hour, whatever that amount of time is, where you can work on a settle on your bed, where you can do your work and watch a movie or whatever the thing is. But I think the struggle that a lot of people have is that they'll have walked their dog earlier in the day and their dog is still full of beans, and then they'll go on to sit down and watch a movie and their dog just can't help themselves but like pester them the whole time, or bark in their kennel or bark in the other room or whatever. So understanding the order of operations in this case, but really understanding the why. Like why is it a good idea why is it a good idea before bed to do physical exercise, mental stimulation or exercise, and then take them out so that you can sleep all night? We talk a lot about that in those programs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to speak to, I saw a lot of people when we asked, what sort of challenges are you having at home? A lot of people mentioned jumping up. And jumping up's a great one to apply these 3 steps to. When we talk about foundation and fairness, we have to talk about, has your dog learned to sit in at your side? Has your dog learned to sit when someone was approaching them? That's obviously the foundation. The fairness part would be you're not walking them right up to strangers on the street. You're not letting them run around your house when family's coming in without a house line or a leash, or even, not separating them from those people, because they're probably going to jump up. It's really exciting when people come in the house. But the timing part is the part I really want to talk to you about right now. What indication, we talked about this earlier, but what indication is your dog going to give you that they might jump up on the counter? What are they going to do before they jump up on the counter? What are they going to do before they jump up on, I believe Shannon calls Aunt Ida, the person Aunt Ida in the podcast. Make sure you check out McCann Dog's podcast. Actually, she may have just launched it. But they talk a lot about, when you have an elderly family member that comes in the home, all of a sudden the environment's changed, your choices have changed, because you don't want to put your Aunt Ida in a tough situation, and you definitely don't want your dog to hurt anybody. But what might you see your dog do before they jump up? Because this is going to allow you to use good timing, whether you're out on the street or you're in the house, whatever it might be. I'll let you guys answer that.
I thought maybe you wanted me to answer it.
Oh, I mean, we probably can start.
No, we'll wait and see what they say.
It's great. Shannon said, it's great, and Ida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Super chat from Mischief Manager. I'm going to grab that. I don't see anyone that's got any, I don't think anybody really knows.
I think we're a little ahead.
No one's suggested.
Give them a second. I think we're a little ahead.
We'll see. Because I might not recognize this if I weren't looking for it as a dog trainer. Like, what are those things? David says, they'll be looking. Look there. Air sniffing. Okay, Katerina.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. You're right. So both of those answers are correct, but you might even notice something else.
Not specifically looking, though, but like, be more detailed about looking, because dogs could look at somebody and not have any interest in going to them.
Yeah.
So you're on the right track, but like, there's something a little bit more specific. That's good, though. Did you read that super chat?
No. Let's answer this and then we'll get back to it.
Air scenting, yeah. Back legs go up. Yeah. Or perhaps front legs go up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we sometimes we'll describe this as like like a coil. So sometimes when dogs are really excited and they're thinking about jumping up, they'll actually like kind of go into a bit of a play bow, and then they look like they're about to launch themselves into the air. Or some dogs will like get really wiggly, or their ears will pin back, or their spine kind of goes in a C because they're super excited and they're wiggling. Right. Looking for sure, those of you guys that said looking is good, but they will look with sort of a curiosity or an intensity, and there is like looking and there's like looking. It's like two totally different types of things that they'll do. Their eyes will lock off on for sure. And that's when we need to react, because I think I mentioned this earlier if you guys were listening at the beginning of our live tonight, and that is there are some unwanted behaviors on our list that dogs will do that are just glorious and self-rewarding to a dog. And unfortunately, jumping is one of those things. And a lot of people struggle with jumping up because they often don't react until the dog has already jumped up on top of somebody, and they've jumped up and they're wiggling and they're launching, they're bopping the person in the nose or whatever it might be. And then we're trying to get the leash and pull the dog off, and the dog's like, this is awesome. This is so fun. And then, you'll go through the proper steps to get your dog to go off, but then you think, sir, why is my dog continuing to jump? Well, it's because your timing's off. They're allowed to jump for a few moments in the first place because perhaps you didn't have them on leash, or you didn't maybe predict that scenario very well, or maybe you had your dog a little too close to that person where it was too easy for them to jump. Maybe you didn't have your leash gathered up. Maybe you didn't have your dog's attention. There's like countless things clearly that you can do, but a lot of the time it's because our timing is off. And if you can stop your dog from jumping by replacing it with a different behavior, like sit, for example, again, like I'd mentioned before, take an unwanted behavior and replace it with something that you do want, and then build value for that behavior so the dog actually really enjoys to do that instead. That will be a better way to fix your problem.
Yeah, and I was just thinking as you were talking about that, we were talking a little bit about the dog being pretty gratified by jumping up on someone, or jumping up on the counter, or jumping up in general. Isn't it difficult when you have a friend, a family member, a stranger who you meet on the street, and they're like, oh, it's fine, I love dogs, and you've been working on this, and you're like, oh, I can't believe this is happening, and they're like, oh, just petting up your dog and it's having a great time. The third thing you need to think about, the third factor that you need to think about when you're trying to stop these unwanted behaviors, is consistency.
Yes.
Consistency is key, no matter where you are, the environment, what time of day it is, whether you're tired or not. Maintain the same expectations for your dog. And this comes down to consistency. Now, with that situation, if a dog's jumping up on a person, it's in your best interest to say, oh, no. They say, oh, it's fine, I love dogs. Say, oh, actually, we're trying to work on it. Could you help me train for a second? There's a video we have on, I don't even know where it is, but it'd be really good if you're struggling with your dog jumping up on people. I forget what it's called. People are ruining your training or something like that. But it talks a lot about you need to be consistent. So you ask that person, you get them engaged and say, hey, can you help me train? Just don't pet him right now. I don't really want him or her jumping up on you. Can you just stay right there and we're going to work on something?
I actually have a personal story that I can tell you about this that's sort of funny.
Yeah.
It has to do with a border collie that I used to have years ago named Jitterbug, which maybe I should have never called her that because she was very much a jitterbug. And she loved people so much, and she would wiggle, and then sometimes she would even submissively pee because she was a bit of a softie, and she just had very poor emotional control when she was a puppy. And I would try to do this. I would take her to different places where people would be around. And she was a very cute little border collie puppy. Everybody, also because she was so friendly, people just were naturally attracted to her, which made my job harder. Yeah. But I remember telling people I would be working on her, sitting in control at my side with a nice loose leash with attention. And people would walk up and I would have to say to them, stop right there. Don't come any closer. Don't even look at her, because they would stand there, and if they made eye contact with her, well, she would melt and start wiggling all over again. So I had some people really help me. They were so great, because I said, will you just help me? Just stand there for a second. Turn your back to us. Pretend we're not here. And they would just stand there, turn their back, and then Jitter would kind of be like, okay, they're not really paying attention. And she would relax and sit at my side, and then I would reward. And she would go, oh, okay. And then we would get the person to turn around, but look at me rather than look at Jitter. And again, she'd wiggle for a second, and then she'd settle in her sit under control, and then I could reward her. And over a few weeks, it did take a few weeks, not in one training session.
That's important to remember.
Yeah.
And this is why consistency is so important.
Yeah, we got to the point where people could, walk up and stand close and get to the point where they could pet her. But it took me a really long time to get to that point, because her drive for greeting people was so immense. I had to really break that down. But it took weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. But it also took getting those people to make it easier on me, because if I was working my butt off to get her to be calm and not jump and wiggle and pee everywhere, and they were leaning over top of her and, oh, you're so cute. It's like, oh, no. But if you can kind of get ahead of the storm and just give the person some coaching on what to do, you can have just the most amazing training sessions. And you can't beat that, because it was natural situations that this was happening versus me setting it up. And it was excellent.
To speak to the consistency, I know a lot of people struggle because they think oh, well, we just got home from dog school, or, oh, he hasn't had much fun today because we only went for one walk, and, I should probably let him jump up this time.
Yeah.
This is really where you can create a lot of confusion for your dog. This is especially important for leash pulling. I struggle when students say something like, oh, he pulls... He's great the first half of the walk, and then the second half is an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
Or he's terrible while we're walking to the park, and then he's pretty good on the way home. Well, this is creating confusion in your dog. It's not fair to have an expectation that they're not going to pull on leash if half of their walk you're allowing it.
Yeah.
You can chalk it up to whatever the situation is. He's tired. I'm tired. He wants to get to the park, but your dog doesn't really rationalize that way. You need to make sure that you're giving them great information 100% of the time. And this goes back a little bit to talk about the investment of time and energy. And it's going to be a lot. It's, it can be a lot.
No one's saying it's easy.
No.
Or that it's just a piece of cake.
For sure.
It is a lot of work. But if you put the work in, the type of enjoyment that you get from a dog that listens well and wants to hang out with you, wants to please you, it's just, there's really truly nothing like it. It's just so much more enjoyable to live life with a dog that has good manners and likes to listen. You can take them more places, you can give them more freedom, they have a better life, you have a better life. But I think sometimes when you're in the deep dark depths of despair in the first 12 months, really, it's like, oh my God, why did I sign up for this? But it makes a real sharp corner when you get, all the foundation parts done. And then it's so fun. Yeah. It is so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a dog who was 2 years old, and she was crazy. And this was before,
2 years before she came.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
McCann's.
She was the reason that I went to McCann's, and it was frustrating. I just wanted to go home from work and take her for a nice walk and go play fetch at the park. Well, I didn't have a chance because she didn't have the listening skills. I'd given her bad information all up until that point, and then I went to my vet who had trouble assessing her because she was just so much wild and crazy energy, and he said, listen, you have to go over to McCann Dogs. I can't even assess her. You need to get some skills. So that's exactly what I did. And now 17 or 18 years later, I wear the shirt.
You got a blue shirt on.
Yeah, I got a blue shirt. From Mischief Manager, thank you for the super chat. Discovered you guys tonight while looking for puppy biting videos. Can't wait to binge watch your content. My 14-week-old Dobie is driving me and my kiddos crazy with his biting and jumping. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, very cute puppies.
There'll be no running out of videos for you to watch.
So Chris and mentions, here's a really good topic for the future: how to get family members used to use the same commands consistently. How to train the human, and this is going to be a big step in your consistency plan. We've talked about foundation and fairness. We've talked about timing, but consistency might require more of the family members in this, and it is important. We get this question often, and it's usually something
Can
like,
you train husbands? Can you
that's
train
usually
wives?
what the question is. Yeah. Can you
put a gentle leader on my husband?
Right. Can you train my husband, or get him to can you convince him to not let the dog jump up, or not nip and bite everyone's hands or his hands? And I'll tell you, I think just being really honest with your spouse, family member, friend, whoever the person is that's setting you back, say, I'm working really hard on trying to fix whatever this problem is. And, I watched the train station last night, and they said there the consistency is really important.
And Ken and Kale will personally come to the house
That's
and
right.
kick your butt if you don't listen.
Yeah, they, I'm hired out as a muscle.
Look how scary he is.
Yeah, aren't I scary?
I will say this often. I get this question a lot from spouses that are frustrated with one another. Sometimes we feel a little bit like psychiatrists.
Yeah.
But something that I always try to have them think about is that this is really all of these decisions that we're making about, consistency. It's because we all want the best for the dog. It's really about the dog. So if you can kind of spin it that way, that it's more fair, more clear, less stressful, all of those things for the dog, if everybody's on the same page, because at the end of the day, everybody in the family loves the dog. Everybody in the family wants the best for the dog. And if they can understand that, being on the same page and being consistent is all going to lead to the dog having less stress, getting trained faster, being happier, all of that type of thing, then it's easier to kind of get everybody on board. Make it about the dog and less about you.
Yeah. And statistically, trained dogs live longer. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for obvious reasons, of course.
I can believe it.
When we're talking about solving some of your, most persistent, frustrating struggles, the behaviors that drive you crazy, you have to focus on the 3 steps. Foundation and fairness. What have you taught your dog? Should they understand this at this point? And are you putting them in a situation where they could be expected to make a good choice? If not, you need to change some things around. Timing. Is it happening when you aren't watching? Well, that's not your dog's fault. That's your fault. You need to make sure that you're putting yourself in a position where you can have great timing, where you're looking for that problem behavior, whether it's digging in the yard, barking at the neighbor, whatever it is. You need to be giving your dog great information. In an absence of information, they're going to think whatever feels good, whatever tastes good is the right thing. So you need to be sure that you're there to show them what is the right choice. And consistency, it's going to be work, but it is so very worth it. Tonight we talked a little bit about those 3 challenges. We have both in-person and online programs available for you. Visit mccandogs.com.
Come and train with us. You'll have so much
love
fun.
To see you. We meet lots of students who were train station passengers at one point or another.
We have a really great community, and you can see we have a lot of some of the people from our community in there, and they're all become buddies because you all end up having the same issues with your dogs. You can commiserate with one another as we help you, of course.
If you're local, March 9th, we are having a free puppy seminar at our training facility.
We're not giving away free puppies.
No, it's a new puppy training seminar.
It's for humans only, too.
That's right. Yeah, just for humans. And we'd love to have you there. So if you're local, we'd go to our website, I think mccandogs.com.
Yep, come and meet us. Come and see the facility.
Yeah,
great.
I'm excited to have you. At the end of tonight's show, when I hit the off the air button, you're going to be sent over to McCann Dogs Music. We talked about it a little bit earlier. We worked with some music creators to make the right music for dogs so that, you can fill that space with sound so that when they're left alone or when you're crate training, they're not disrupted by some of that environmental stuff that sometimes dogs can find a little off-putting. So we would love for you to check that out. Maybe most importantly, though, you've taken down your notes, those of you note takers, and with all of the teaching, all of the training, all of the things that we've talked about tonight, the rest, my friends, well, that is up to you.